Today, we have a recurring guest. I think you're the only one, Fernando, that's been here on it twice so far. This is an epic show. Fernando is a very young buck. He's based out of Chicago. He's safe, though. He has not tried to murder anybody. He's a 28-year-old senior managing partner of Titan Wealth Group based out of Chicago. He had a residential wholesaling business. He still does, but now he focuses, I can't believe he's only 28. He focuses on self-storage investing. And today he's got a special presentation coming back at us from his home office because of COVID. First of all, how are you feeling? Fernando, you still good?
I'm feeling great, man. Yeah.
You feeling good? Family's good? Office is good?
Everyone's good.
Even better. We have a 0.00004% infection going on in Massachusetts right now. But, high alert. So It's okay. We're all working from home. Hey, thanks for coming on today, man. And I'm really looking forward to this topic. If for those who didn't see the last episode, we'll make sure to link to the last episode in the show notes. Just tell us a quick, history of you and how you got into real estate.
Yeah. Started off in the 9-to-5 life. My parents are both immigrants from Brazil, and they really hit home, the American dream. Go to school, get good grades, go get a good job, retire with a pension. Obviously, that doesn't work anymore. So once I got out of college, I was working at a Fortune 50 company for about 13 months before I decided to quit, go into real estate full time. From there, I've tried every type of real estate, or almost every type: single family, multifamily, retail. We did flips, we did rentals, we did wholesale. And then finally, I was getting fed up with the dealing with tenants. Everyone talks about passive income, but once you actually start doing it, it doesn't feel very passive, does it? So once we found self-storage, we started going full bore ahead with that. I think the last time I was on your show, I only had maybe 1 or 2 facilities that we had held on to. Now we just closed on our 7th one. We're closing on an 8th one, I think, tomorrow. And then we have 5 properties under contract currently. So those we'll talk about here in a little bit.
And COVID be damned. Look at all the business that's still going on here, huh?
Yeah.
That's incredible. If you want, tell us a little bit about how you even ramped up. And today's all about underwriting, which is what we want to chat about.
Yeah.
But if you don't mind, share with some of the people as to what's the best way you're finding these deals? How can you get
it's kind of a multi-pronged approach. So the very first approach we took was kind of the wholesaler approach, right? Direct mail. We pulled a list, and that list is an NAICS code list, which is a land classification code list. I believe that a code we use is 531130. Lessers of mini storage and warehouse. We pulled the list, and then we scrubbed out all of the top operators and top management companies, and then just sent out direct mail, started getting calls in. But then as I've been doing this, I've been going on podcasts like yours, talking about self-storage, talking to other brokers, talking to investors. And now we're starting to get a bunch of people that are, reaching out with properties they found or drove past, or maybe they have it under contract, but they don't know how to underwrite it. And we just go in and either partner with them or buy it off them for a wholesale fee, or wholesale it with them if we don't want to buy it ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Good stuff. So it's the same old, and now it's relationship based, which is where everybody wants to get to. Good for you, right, brother. All right. If you guys are interested in learning why self-storage over traditional real estate investing, make sure you check out our last podcast, which is going to be in the show notes here. Today, he's going to be going over basically how to effectively underwrite a self-storage deal, right?
Right.
So let's have you take it away from there, my man. However we want to start this, and if you got slides or screens, we'll figure it out. And if you don't, we'll just take it.
Yeah. So I'm going to do about 5 topics here. And those topics are going to be traffic counts, local demand drivers and demographics. We're going to talk about how you do a competition study. We're going to talk about supply and demand analysis, or what's called a supply index number. And then last but not least, we're going to do the actual property analysis. Okay. So let's start. The very first thing we do when a property comes to us, before we start wasting any time, is what we do is call it a chicken pox test or a polka dot test. We'll
don't say chicken pox right now, dude. Not
polka dot test.
Polka dot test. That sounds good.
So we pull up the facility on, call it, Google Maps or Google Earth, and we just type in self-storage, and then we do a local area search, and then it'll pull up all the little red dots that are nearby. That's the very first thing. If we pull up a self-storage facility and there's a ton of red dots all over the place right next to the facility, it's probably not going to be a very good facility for us to continue. So that's going to be put down lower in the priority level in our leads, right? But if it's, say, not a lot of dots around it, maybe there's only 2 or 3 competitors, then we're going to start looking at it. The next thing we do is we look at the traffic counts on the main road and the curb cuts next to the facility. Easiest way to do that is you go to like the local traffic count data for the state. So like I'm in Illinois, so we go to IDOT, or Illinois Department of Transportation, look up the traffic count maps and look at them. Ideally, we're looking for properties that have a minimum of 12,000 cars passing past the facility each day. The reason why is self-storage is an extremely localized business. 30 to 60% of your clientele are going to be coming from just driving past the facility every day. It's invisible to them until the day that they know that they need storage. All of a sudden, they see it on their drive to work, and they're going to stop in to check rates.
Yeah, right time, right place, right message, right?
Exactly. What we've also found recently is that now with the invention of, cell phones and everybody's on their phone to find anything they want, 60% of our customer base will actually find our facility first and foremost on either the internet or on Google Maps. So that's one of the value add things that we look at is, does this facility, can you find it on Google? Does it have a website? These are all things that we're looking for, right? So say it matches all those criteria. Then we go through and actually I'll do a case study while I'm going through these. So There's one that we purchased last year. It's called American Self Storage. It's in Danville, Illinois. Okay. So the very first thing we did is we went to go look at traffic counts. It's right off of a major highway. We're looking for at least 12,000 cars per day. This one on I-74 actually had 26,000. So it hit that criteria. Okay. The next thing that we're going to look at is the demand drivers or the demographics in the area. 70% of your self-storage tenants are going to be what we call residential tenants. These are, just the average, mom and pop living in a house. The very interesting thing that we found out was that most people think that these people that need storage live in a tiny little 200 square foot apartment. Turns out that's not the case. Only 27% of residential tenants live in an apartment. The other 65% live in a single family home. And of those 65% that live in a single family home, 65% have garages, 47% have attics, and 33% have basements. So there's a ton of storage, but for whatever it is, I forgot what the rule is called, but your stuff expands to fit the space that you have, right? Kind of like the law of gases.
Yeah,
so that's the first type.
There's a vacuum, right.
Exactly. So that's the first type. 70% of your tenant base, residential clients. 17%, these are my favorite types of tenants, are your commercial tenants. These are the guys that local hardware guy, maybe he doesn't have enough space for a store, but he rents a couple 10 by 30 unit facilities. Maybe one of our facilities had a tortilla manufacturing company. So they would manufacture tortillas. They'd drop them off at the self-storage facility as a halfway point, and then the semi-trucks would go pick them up from our self-storage facility and then take them across the nation, right? So that's 17%. I really like the commercial tenants because they have a super long average lease time. They, on average, stay about 25 to 26 months before moving out, and that's on average. We have some guys that have been there for 10, 12 years. So those are the two major. Then you have two smaller groups, which are the next biggest, and that's going to be students. That's about 6%. The problem with students is that they usually will swell your occupancy in the summer, and then once they go back to school, your occupancy drops back down. Then the final class is military. A lot of military, they get called on to duty, usually don't have a lot of notice, and they just need a place to store their stuff. They'll usually be, average stay time of anywhere between, call it 12 to 13 months. So what we do is the very first thing after looking at traffic counts is we zoom out on the Google map and see, is there a lot of dense residential or maybe like a commercial park in the area? If we see that the self-storage facility is surrounded by single family and multifamily homes, that's a huge plus for us because that's where all of our clientele are going to come from. What you find out is that in an urban area like downtown Chicago, 90% of your tenants are going to be coming from a 1 mile radius. If you're in like the suburbs, your trade area is what they call it, is about 3 miles. And then if you're like in the super far suburbs or what we call the exurbs, you're looking at about a 5 mile to maybe a 10 mile radius if it gets a little bit more rural, right? So these are highly localized, and this is a way that you can find opportunities to serve underserved pockets. Unlike, say, multifamily, where, I live in Chicago, I live on the south side of Chicago. At any time, if I want to go to the north side, that's a 10 or 15-mile drive. There's no problem, especially if I'm a tenant that's like chasing rent, right? A cheaper rent. With self-storage, that's not usually the case. People don't want to drive 15 miles out of their way to go store their stuff, especially if they want to stop there. So that's the demographic part. The next part that we look at is population growth, right? We want to see heavy population growth. That's always a good thing for our long-term buy and hold self-storage facilities. When there's population shrinkage, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to go after that property. It just means that we probably won't hold it for 15 or 20 or 25 years. The reason why is self-storage, we serve people in transition, right? You got a new job, you're moving, maybe you're upgrading house, downgrading in houses. That's why right now with this whole COVID thing, our self-storage facilities are doing really well. Our occupancies have actually jumped over our usual ceilings in each one of our markets. And that's because people are right now, I'm assuming, downsizing, but they don't want to throw away all their drawings from their kids and the sentimental stuff. They're not going to throw that away. So they're going to downsize from, say, a $2,400 a month mortgage to a $1,200 a month mortgage, and then go get a $100 per month self-storage, unit from me. So on this property here in Danville, we looked at the demographics and we saw, okay, we have a household income of about 40,000. There's a population of about 35,000 in the 5-mile trade area. And there's about 16 to 17,000 housing units with a new casino that was just approved to start construction. So that's going to bring on a lot of jobs. It's going to bring a lot of transient workers. That's going to be good for self-storage, right? Rule of thumb is we want to see about a 45,000 plus median income. That's a good start for your first facility. Once you get more advanced, then you can start kind of discounting some of these things as long as some of these other factors are really good for you, like that casino, for example, on this one.
Gotcha. And it seems there's a lot of factors here. Going back to your 1, 3, and 5 mile outs, right? So you have your main suburbs, your city, your suburbs, and then your exurbs. Is that what you said?
Exurbs.
All right. I know those are just like sort of the geographic ranges, but do you like either one of those better? What's your favorite out of those three?
Yeah, I love 3 mile and 5 mile. I'm never going to buy properties in downtown urban areas because there's too much competition from the big boys, the REITs, right? These REITs are making crazy offers on those types of facilities in the 4, 4.5%, 5% cap rate ranges. I'm usually buying self-storage facilities day one at the 8.5% to the 12% cap rate range. So just de facto, because of the numbers I need to hit, that pushes me farther out of the urban core and into the suburbs and into the exurbs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, gotcha. And then, so that one mixed with the income, mixed with the population growth, maybe you're not even done yet, I apologize, but are you able to then rank what you feel is the most important to least important?
Exactly, yeah. So we'll always look to see, okay, there's so much you can do with a desktop study, but then you have to go in and physically drive the market and see what's it like, right? And that's kind of what we did. When we got to our next underwriting criteria, which is a competition study, we actually found out a lot of things we didn't know just by driving the specific market. So how I do these competition studies is we're talking about that 1, that 3, and that 5 mile radius, right? So what I'll do is I'll actually go into Google Earth and I'll use the drawing tool and I'll draw these concentric circles, a 1, a 3, and a 5 mile radius around my self-storage facility. Then I'll type in self-storage facilities in Danville, Illinois, and it'll pop up all the competition around me. And I'll see where are they in relation to my facility. So when I initially did this, it pulled up a bunch of self-storage facilities all over the place. And I usually like to see, a subject property that only has one competitor in a 1 mile radius, maybe 2 or 3 competitors in a 3 mile radius, and maybe another handful in the 5 mile. We were way above those metrics. But then once we drove the market, I drove to each one of the competitors. Turns out half of those competitors had gone out of business long ago and they never pulled down their Google listing page. So that immediately got rid of half of the competitors. So that's an advantage that I would have over, say, like a larger player that buys 100 facilities a year, because they're not going to drive every competitor at every project they're looking at. So that's how we get an edge as a smaller investor.
That's awesome. And before you're even driving out though, Fernando, you're just at your desktop computer. Does that all just take you, what, 40 minutes, if that, to do?
Yeah, so the whole underwriting process, we can probably get it done in about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's insane. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So
Go back over your key indicators again. So you have your 1, 3, and 5 mile, and you said 3 and 5 are the best. I'll let you talk. I'm just trying to sum things up here.
Yeah. So 1, 3, and 5, I don't want to see a lot of competition in those areas. Once I see what type of competition there is, I start to secret shop them over the phone. So I'll call them and I'm say, hey, I'm looking for a couple units. I'm trying to see, if you got anything available, what are your pricing? So the very first thing I do is I start writing down all their pricing, because then I can see, is the facility that I'm buying, is it below market? Is there an opportunity for me to raise rents day one and then just do a quick value add? The nice thing about self-storage is because it is a commercial asset, it's not valued based off of comps. It's valued based off of the amount of income, net operating income that it can produce. So if I can day one just send a letter to all the tenants that I have after I close, I say, hey, we're raising you guys up from 70% of street rates all the way to 95 or 100% of street rates. I've just increased the value of that facility by, if I'm buying it at a 10 cap and I raised the NOI on the facility by 20 grand, I just raised the valuation on that property by $200,000 in one day. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. That's when you're starting to you change your voice when you call them, right?
Usually it's funny. What we usually do now is, instead of kind of secret shopping them, we just call it as like a symbiotic business. We say, hey, we're a logistics company / moving company. We found that when self-storage in the area is at 90% plus occupancy, our business does really well, and we'll send you referrals as well to anybody that's moving in and out of the market. Are you at 90+%? And the reason why we specifically ask for that number is self-storage is considered 100% stabilized at 90% occupancy. The reason why is, if you're at 100% occupancy, that means that your rent rates are too low. If you're below that, then there can be a lot of factors that add to that. So if I find out that everybody in the market's at 90% plus occupancy, that's a really good sign for my facility.
Will they give you that information?
Usually when you call, you're just talking to like a low-level manager. You're usually not talking to an owner, and they're not thinking about, oh, do I need to protect this information? They're just thinking about, how do I get these properties rented, or how do I bring in more income for the owners so that they give me a better bonus at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So with this Danville property, we called the closest competitors all within a 5-mile radius, and they were all at 95 to 98% occupied. That tells us that there is a shortage of storage versus the amount of demand in the area.
Fantastic. Okay. And so when you took that information that you gathered from those competitors, it had the density or lack of density that you had wanted on your desktop, your polka dot test, right?
Right.
And then you checked on population growth. You checked what was the number for population growth?
Oh, I just like to see that it's going up if I'm going to hold it long term. If it's going down, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that I won't hold it long term. I may, quote unquote, flip the property. So I'll buy it, I'll do the value add, and I'll immediately sell it in 18 to 36 months.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And then you checked on the median income, which was roughly, was it at your level that you wanted, the 40 to 45?
It was slightly below. So it was at about a 39,000, 40,000 median income. We like to see roughly 45. So It's slightly below, but again, not a big deal once you start seeing some of these other factors that we'll go through here.
Gotcha. And then when you did, you started to see there was high demand for it. You could probably raise rates. And is there anything else on that deal you wanted to go over on the underwriting side?
Yeah. So once we've got all the competitors and I've drawn those concentric circles, then we look at the meat and potatoes, which is the supply index number. And this is usually what takes the most amount of time to do, because we do it all manually. So how we find the supply index number, which is the gauge on how much demand there is in the market, is by taking your concentric circle, picking what's appropriate. So this Danville facility, it's more of an exurb, more of a rural style development. So we chose a 4-mile trade area, okay?
Okay.
Supply index is a ratio of total net rentable square feet, or square feet of self-storage space that people can actually put boxes and stuff into, divided by the population in that circle, okay? So net rentable square feet divided by population is your supply index number. You're usually shooting for a 7 net rentable square feet per capita or lower number, okay? So for example, 7 net rentable is somewhat considered the national average for equilibrium. So if I come across a facility that is at 3.5 net rentable square feet per capita, that means that I can double the total amount of storage in that area to meet the demand, to hit equilibrium, okay?
Gotcha. Okay.
So we started looking at this Danville property, and we started running the demographic data. And how we do this very easily. You just go on Google Earth, which is a free program. You find each one of your competitor self-storage facilities, and then you just draw boxes around them to find the square footage. There's a measuring tool in Google Earth. This is all free, right? Once we did that, we divided it by the total population in that concentric circle. And you can find that very easily using a free app called SiteWise Mobile. You just drop a pin, tell it how many miles the radius is, and it'll tell you the demographics in that radius, okay? And we found that for this facility in a 4-mile radius, the supply index was a 4 net rentable square feet per capita, which means we can add we can almost double the amount of storage in the area to meet demand. So that means that there was more demand than there was supply, which was good for us.
That's okay.
Okay. So that was the first 4, right? So the first four, just to recap, was traffic counts. Number 2 is demand drivers and demographics. Number 3 was competition study. And number 4 was the supply study, which is the supply index number. And then if all of that checks out, then we actually start running numbers on the property. So number 5 is the property analysis itself. We're going to look at the unit mix. Does it have a lot of small units like 5 by 5? Does it have a lot of big units like 10 by 30s? I'm a fan of larger units, usually 10 by 15 or larger, so 150 square feet or larger, because those stay rented longer. When you look at those unit mixes, you want to compare your size units to what all the competitors are charging. So say, for example, my unit, or the facility I'm buying, a 10 by 10, is priced at $45, but then when I look at all the competitors that are 100% full, they're all charging $73. So that's a huge opportunity for me to come in and day one just raise rents before I do anything, and raise the value of the property by 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, depending on the purchase price of the property.
Would you do anything before just raising rents to make them feel like they were getting anything? I know, like value add multifamily, you do a few things, right?
Yeah. So we do this all basically simultaneously, right? So we start doing improvements to the security, because self-storage is all about security of someone's goods, right? And so we look at, can we add climate control units? Can we add cameras? Can we gate the facility if it's not gated? Can we put interior and exterior access using keypads so that a person doesn't even have to be there for you to go in? You can go into your facility at midnight if you want, right? We look at putting security lights in. So we start doing all this, but what we do is day one, we send we're the new owner letter. And in that letter, it says that we're going to be raising rates in 3 months. So 3 months from the day that we buy it, the rates are going up by this amount. And we're doing that because over those 3 months, we're going to be doing all of these improvements that we're going to be, that we're telling that we're going to do here.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Right? Yeah. We call that the friendly takeover letter. Right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So after I look at the rents, then I start looking at the expenses, because again, there's 2 ways to raise NOI. You either increase your income or you drop your expenses. And what I've found is a lot of mom and pop self-storage facility owners don't have a very good grasp on their expenses. So the very first thing we do when we come in to affect the expenses is we get a new insurance quote, because our property insurers specialize in self-storage, so they know there isn't as much liability as there is, say, in an asset that there is habitation by living people, right? In self-storage, humans are not supposed to be staying in those units, so there's less liability to an insurance company, right? Because your biggest liability is general liability, somebody getting hurt, falling, dying, those types of things. So that's number one. Number two is we hire a tax attorney to go contest the property taxes. What we found is a lot of these self-storage owners, they have never done this, and they've just paid the taxes and didn't even know that they can fight them. And what we found when we go to the counties is that they're usually putting in a totally different asset class into the bucket that they use to average. So for example, to find out what my mill rate is, the county may say, okay, well, this medical office building is paying this amount in taxes, and this commercial strip center is paying this amount in taxes. We have nothing to do with those types of properties. So we fight them, and about 66% of the time, 2/3 of the time, we win on getting our property taxes reduced. A second strategy that we use to reduce those property taxes is that when we go buy the self-storage facility, remember, not only is it a real estate asset, but you're also buying a business. So what you can do is say, hey, I'm going to buy this facility for $800,000. So we're going to talk about Danville here. I'm going to buy this facility for $800,000. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay $550,000 for the actual land and the improvements. And then I'm going to pay another $250,000 for the goodwill of the business. A county cannot tax you on the goodwill of the business. They can only tax you on the land and on the improvements upon the land. So that's a very quick way to get your taxes dropped immediately.
Did you guys use attorneys for that, or are you doing that in-house too? Yeah.
No, we use attorneys. Usually, so it's one of those, what I call, it's a low value activity for us. It's a high value activity for an attorney, right? Yeah. They know how to do it. They have all the connections, and we don't have to pay them up front for that. Usually the way that these tax contesting attorneys work is that their fee is 1/3 of the amount of tax they saved you in your first year.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, that's awesome.
So if they drop my property taxes by $6,000, I owe them a check for $2,000 once they're done. If they're unable to get them to drop the taxes, I don't have to pay anything.
Gotcha. And that specific center that you've been referring to, so you did all your due diligence on it, said, yep, we're going to pull the trigger on it. You then pulled the trigger and you affected your value adds. Have you gotten through the process of a refi or resale yet?
So we're about to actually do that. So this property we bought about a year ago. We are about 80% through the value add process, and we're going to lump this property in with another 6 properties into a life insurance loan and push all of that portfolio into a little fund that we're starting. And it'll be a fixed income fund, basically.
Gotcha. Very, very, very cool. And that's a whole other topic that we'll definitely be having you on for another time.
Okay.
But let's talk about, maybe you want to pick one more of your deals that you were working on, and we can to bring us through that process too?
Sure. So here's a deal that we just finalized today, about 30, 40 minutes ago. It's
fresh off the presses. Yes.
Fresh off the presses. So I was talking about how I love partnering with people that don't know what they're doing in storage and teaching them by making them an equity partner in a deal, right? So we have a mutual friend, John Carcone, who's in the Collective Genius Mastermind with both of us. He's a master marketer. You tell him to go find anything, he can find it, and he can find it in droves. So I said, hey, John, I know you like storage. You've been talking to me about storage for maybe 6 months now. You want to get involved. Start marketing, and then I'll handle the rest. So he did that. He found these 2 properties in Kansas, $5 million total for the portfolio. We wanted to only pay about $450 or $4.5 million for that portfolio. So then I was like, man, we really like this deal. It hits all the metrics we like. How do we get this done? So then we tapped into another mutual friend of ours, Eddie Speed, that runs the Note School, and he teaches people how to buy and sell on terms, on seller finance. And what we ended up being able to do is taking that $500,000 difference that we were apart from the seller, turning that into a second position seller held mortgage over 20 years, and with a stair-step model. You know, first third of that 20 years, we're going to be paying 2% interest. So that's going to drive down the amount of principal, which is great. All the payments are going to be basically all principal. Then in the second third of that 20 years, or the next 80 months, it jumps up to 4%. And at the end of that 80 months, so now we're at 160 months, the seller has a call option where he can call the loan due. But to entice him not to do that on the last 80 months or the last third of the 20-year mortgage, we step up the interest rate to 6% for him. Now, to him, he loves that. But if you understand how mortgages work, you realize that you pay most of the interest in the front half of the amortized schedule, right? So by the time that we're paying a 6% mortgage, we've already paid a ton of the principal down on that property.
That's the secret. There it is right there. Look at this. So Fernando's coming at us today with self-storage underwriting, self-storage value adds, and he just gave you a course in Eddie Speed's note school. Pretty much the value add king dude right here. So. Fernando, that's a ton of information. And what's the best way that you want to work with people as you go forward?
Yeah. So thanks to another mutual friend of ours, Ryan Pineda, he's been pushing me to start getting my social media game up there. So I started a new handle on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. It's called The Storage Stud.
Yes.
So if you wanna reach out to me on Instagram, reach out to me on Facebook, on LinkedIn. It's all, if just type in The Storage Stud, you'll find me. You'll find my website as well. We're looking to work with people, right? So if you're looking to, get into self-storage, give us a call. If you have a self-storage deal that you maybe drove past or you need help underwriting, give us a call. We love working with people. We've already partnered with probably 4 or 5 different operators in the last 12 months that knew nothing about storage beforehand. They were single family guys, multifamily guys, mobile home guys, some guys that were just doing stuff in the stock market, right? And they've called us and they've partnered with us.
What geographies are you looking for specifically? Have you honed in on any?
All over the place. So we invest in 24 states. It's too long of a list to go over right here, right now. But basically, if it's in the Midwest or it has low state taxes or low property taxes, we're investing there.
All right. Well, Massachusetts is out, but you didn't want that anyway with COVID. So forget it. We're high risk.
Yeah, but maybe the urban core doesn't make sense, but maybe some of the surrounding areas make sense, right?
Yeah, for sure. Fernando, this was like an awesome value add presentation. You know what? Let me ask you one of our parting questions that we have for some people.
Sure.
Ready? I think I already asked you one of these before. I'm going to ask you a different one this time. And this is actually very relevant. So for those of you watching this podcast, it's late March here in 2020, and we're in like week 3 of this quarantine, right? And we're all working from home. Our office is all working virtually from home. And Fernando, even though he has a full setup with his podcast equipment, whatever, is working from home too. What routines do you work with every day to get you moving? Do you have a routine?
I do. Yeah. So especially recently, now that I can focus on it, kind of being in quarantine, I really like to go to sleep early. I like being up and at 'em before everybody else. And the reason why is usually around 8:30, 9 a.m., my phone and my email just start blowing up and I get so distracted I can't get anything done. So recently I've been waking up between 3:30 and 5 a.m., getting my coffee in, doing a quick workout to get the blood flowing. And then I get in the office and then I usually have 4 to 4.5 hours of solid productive work that I can get done before my email starts going off, before my phone starts going off. I really love that. Recently, I've also been doing some health stuff with my diet as well. So I've been, focusing on eating right, I keep my body in ketosis right now. I'm doing a kind of a 1 meal a day type, or OMAD for some of the people that are in the know out there. And then, drinking a ton of water. I haven't been drinking any alcohol recently, which is new for me. I know on the last podcast, I think I was drinking on the podcast with you. Flashing your New England Patriots mug at me. So.
That was it. Yeah, we don't want to talk about that right now. Ooh.
Right. So yeah, the nice thing too is by doing this, I'm usually done working by 3 p.m. And then that gives me from 3 to 6 or 7 o'clock to go spend time with my friends and my family, especially while the sun is out, which I really love. And then once the sun starts dropping, I go to sleep.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. You've lost a ton of weight. You already know that. I've congratulated you a few times. Before he was in his OMAD phase, Fernando and I were doing our intermittent fasting together, and then our 3 and potentially 5-day fasts. So
yes,
if you want to talk about that, you can Instagram him at the Storage Stud.
Yes, the Storage Stud.
The Storage Stud on his handle. And you guys all know where to find me at AA Real Estate and AA Real Estate Group on the Insta and the Facebook and the Twitter. Ooh, oh gosh, LinkedIn, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Fernando, thank you for being on today, my man. You added a ton of value, and there will be even a third time if you're ready for that when that day comes.
I'm always ready.
Hey, folks, thank you so much for taking part in another episode of the Shut Up and Do It podcast. We bring as much value as we can by sharing top quality guests and speakers. A huge thank you today for Fernando Angelucci. I did that right.
Yeah.
Got it. Who spoke today on self-storage underwriting and self-storage value add, and even gave you a brief lesson in note school from Eddie Speed, which is awesome.